Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Straight Science. Straight Science is an evening seminar series put on by University of Alaska Fairbanks Northwest Campus in Nome, and also University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant, also in Nome. And both Northwest Campus and Alaska Sea Grant, we are public servants of the Bering Strait region. We serve all peoples of the Bering Strait region, which is the homeland and waters of the Inupiaq, St. Lawrence Island Yupik, and Central Yupik peoples. So tonight we've got Madison Kosma. Now she has just gone back. She's talking to us tonight in a storm, and she's in Newport, Oregon. So she is talking to us an hour later than already. She's already an hour later than us, and it feels a lot later for me with the time change. So thank you, Madison, for coming to us and providing us more information about what you're doing and about belugas in our region. And Madison is a PhD graduate student. She is currently with Oregon State University at their Marine Mammal Institute. And so Madison has just returned to Oregon. She was up here in Nome working with Coeric and looking at, well, you'll tell us more about it, Madison, but looking at the health of belugas using drone photography. So we're going to learn more about that and her project and her work as it's unfolding. So Madison, we're so glad you're here, and we're going to have questions. We'll save them at the end, or you can put them in the chat. And with that, we're really glad you're here, Madison. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Gay, so much for having me. I just started this work with belugas in the last couple of years, but I have a long kind of story about how I got into it. So I'm gonna dive into that. And I actually think I'm gonna stop my video because it keeps blurring and I don't want, I'm just a little square. I'll turn it back on for questions, but I think that'll be easier to make sure there's no issues with glitches.
Sounds
But
good.
right now, I'm at Oregon State University. I started this work as my own LLC, and I plan to continue it after it, but that was the way to get funding. And I work with Kate Stafford, who does a lot of acoustic work up in the Arctic, and then John Sitta, who's works at the North Slope Borough, and then a few other individuals do a lot of body condition work with drones, Frederick Christensen and Lars Bader. And these three logos are of organizations. Let's see. How do I go back? Well, previous. It seems like up and down. There we go. Okay. Yeah, these were the three organizations that were with me from the beginning. But then, of course, as I went along, added funders and things, and I'll mention them. But Alaska Beluga Whale Committee, North Slope Borough, and then my permits under Fish and Game. So yeah, just want to give a shout out to them for being with me for the whole journey. And I'll talk more about individuals and organizations that come along throughout the journey. So I'm not a stranger up here. I'm gonna give a little bit of background about myself. Is this in the middle of your, do you see that in the middle?
We see the map of Alaska and Utqiagvik, Nome, and Anchorage.
Brilliant. So you don't see, okay, so I want to make sure you're not seeing the Zoom stuff.
No.
Okay, so there we are in Nome. And then I got to Alaska in 2012. I started working at the Sitka Sound Science. Oh my gosh, Sitka Sound Science Center. It definitely is later here for me. And I was doing science outreach, and I started working with Jan Straley, who some of you might know. She's a really well-known whale biologist that did humpback research in Southeast for decades. An incredible mentor to me and friend. And she was at the University of Alaska Southeast. So started working in her lab, volunteering, and started working. My first experience with whale research was with humpback whales. And then I started my master's degree at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I was studying humpback whale foraging. And when I did that, I teamed up with an organization called Alaska Whale Foundation, who does a lot of work on the Inside Passage, working with bubble netting groups and just the large population of humpback whales that move through there. And they teamed up at the time in 2018 with researchers in Hawaii, because humpbacks go from Alaska to Hawaii, from Alaska the feeding grounds to Hawaii the breeding grounds, and they were working with these individuals, Frederick Christensen and Lars Vider, who are kind of one of the four first founding individuals for doing drone work with whales. So it kind of started in like 2016, 18 that drones are starting to be able to be affordable for researchers, and the technology was there to use them as a non-invasive tool over whales. And when I was finishing up um, my degree in Southeast, I was just really blown away by this tool, of how you could use this drone, fly it over a whale. It doesn't disturb them. You can look at behavior. You can look at health. You can look at these things. And I was just really excited about this new tool. And when I was in Sitka, I used to run Sitka Whale Fest, which was a science festival. Maybe some of you know of it. If you don't, you should look it up. It's a great festival that happens actually this coming weekend. But Craig George, um, who was an incredible researcher up in the North Slope. He lived in Barrow for over 40 years, doing tons of work on bowhead whales. Unfortunately, lost him a few years ago, but I had met him in 2013 when he would come down. He was really good friends with Jan Straley, and he would come down to Sitka to go to Sitka Whale Fest, and he spoke at it many, many times. Actually, the first year I was the director of Sitka Whale Fest, um, he he was a speaker, and it was 2013, and I was so blown away by him. I thought he was so cool. I thought the Arctic was so cool. And so when I was finishing up my degree, and I was just really trying to think about what I wanted to do next, and how I just thought this tool of drones was just so useful, I started chatting with Craig and asked him if anyone was using drones over bowheads. And it was great. Then I started to just kind of be Craig's shadow. I went up to Ukqiavik in 2019, and I followed him around when he did his last bowhead census, which is a count they do um, every 10 years or so, just for the um, to get they work with the IWC to get the amount of bowheads that being taken. And so he ran that, and that was my first experience up there. And he got me going to Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission meetings, and just kind of got me in the community. What I learned from Craig is just get in the community, learn from them. And I told Craig I didn't have any agenda. I had this tool I thought was useful, and I wanted to see if other people thought it was useful, and if it would be helpful for Arctic marine mammals. And so I worked with Craig for a really long time, and we were working with the hunters, and he got me out on the trails, and I was helping build trail with hunters, and I was putting in the work to not just be someone coming in and trying to take what I want. I was there to help and learn and provide a tool if it was helpful. And spent many years doing that. And while I was doing that, my first experience with beluga whales, back to the species of topic, was actually running the Alaska Beluga monitoring program, which is a citizen science program down in Cook Inlet, that gets locals out on the shoreline to help monitor Cook Inlet belugas, which is an endangered species. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's definitely a hot topic. And I think most people know about Cook Inlet belugas. And then in 2023 was when I started working the Alaska Beluga Whale Committee. And essentially, with my work over bowheads, when I was there in the spring in Ukqiavik, while bowhead whales are migrating by, so are beluga whales. And the Alaska Beluga Whale Committee was interested in seeing if I could get the drone over belugas, and if this tool would be used for belugas. And I'll talk more about why, but that's 2023. Then I started flying the drone over belugas as well as bowheads. And I couldn't help myself, shameless shots of aerial shots of bowheads, just because they're also cool whales. And I got pretty mesmerized by the aerial perspective, and the ice is just really cool to look at. I feel like everywhere you look, the ice is different than the other spot. This is a cool one with some polar bear footsteps over there. And then again, while I was doing this, I was starting this pilot project of trying to see if I could get over belugas. And so this is a shot of Ukqiavik, and it was so many whales are going by the ice edge there while bowheads are going by. Actually, the hunters told me I learned so much from them, but that when the belugas start coming, then you know bowheads will start coming because they're going through faster. And so many times that was absolutely the case. You'd see some belugas going by, and then all of a sudden you'd have a bowhead coming by like 15 minutes later. And then Point Hope does a lot of harvesting of belugas. And so after Ukjavik, the community there, and I went to a hunters meeting, and they were really interested in having work there. So I worked with the North Slope Borough to help with harvest sampling of bowheads, and then worked with the hunters to get over beluga whales when I was there. It was great. And then Point Lay as well. So super successful. And I'll dive in more of the details of the work I did in these communities. And I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, 2019 to 2023 was just years of trust building. Like I said, I didn't have an agenda. I just wanted to see if people thought this tool was helpful. And the cool thing too is I didn't want it to just be about whales. I wanted to see if there's other things that people could use drones for. And there's a lot of people in these communities that are flying drones. And also I was able to have my drone help with finding safe trails to get to the ice edge, and had hunters flying the drone to find things like that. And so I just want to say a huge thank you to these communities and the hunters for just all their help to get this off the ground. And also, I really wish I was tracking my own body condition over the years, because the hospitality and the amount of food and all the kindness people provided me. I was eating so much when I was in the field, so much delicious new food, and I feel like I should have taken a picture of myself with a drone of my body condition, because I think I've started to look like a beluga myself over the years. But just such kindness. And because of this work, and because of the communities deciding that this was a tool they saw wasn't a disturbance to the whales, and they saw it wasn't a disturbance to whaling, and they saw it was something that was helpful for multiple different reasons. Working directly with them, I was able to write up proposals and get funding. And so the National Science Foundation kind of funded me and my PhD. I turned the work into a PhD, and then my salary, and then the Marine Mammal Commission, incredible support from them. They supported the beluga work and getting into these communities to see which communities are going to work well for this work, and then analyzing the data and all that. So huge shout out to them. And again, this wouldn't have happened if I didn't work directly with these communities to form these proposals. Okay, so I am not an expert on belugas at all. I'm new to them. I'm new to all the stocks. So there's plenty of people in the room, I think, that know more than me. But I'll do a little overview of the stocks of belugas, just so you have a good understanding about what the project is, and why using drones to look at body condition is helpful. And so there's 5 stocks of belugas in Alaska. And let's start with stock, because a lot of times stocks, people think about fisheries, right? And not so much whales. But the reason we're using stocks is because essentially stock is a population that's genetically distinct and tends to return to the same region for really important things like feeding and socializing and raising calves. And because these animals are being harvested, we need to have these stocks to understand how to manage them. And so they're using genetic studies, satellite tracking, which shows you where these animals are going, which belugas move all over the place, and then observations from whalers and communities, and just in general where they're gathering in the summer to define these stocks. And again, because these groups rarely interbreed, each stock is managed separately to ensure its long-term health. So that's why we're using stocks, because these animals are being harvested, and we like I talked before, coconut belugas is an endangered species. You don't want to use what you know about coconut belugas to manage Bristol Bay or Eastern Chukchi. So this is a way, and this is really complex, and way smarter people than me figure out how to identify these stocks, and the work is constantly being poured into figuring out these stocks and managing them, and co-management groups. And so it's really important and complex work. And this is kind of just a really quick surface level understanding about how it all works. So the stocks are kind of identified essentially by their summer grounds. And so here's a quick map that kind of shows that. So you have the Beaufort sea stock, that this is usually where they summer over in Canada. And again, this stock is actually harvested by inupiat hunters and also inuvialet hunters because it goes from Alaska to Canada. So it's kind of there's a co-managed group for that. And then here's the eastern Chukchi stock. This is where they are in the summer. And of course, the eastern Bering Sea stock stays in Norton Sound in the summer. Then Cook Inlet and Bristol Bay stocks. This is a rough understanding about where they are in the summer, how these stocks are split up. Just a little bit of information again, Cook Inlet belugas. This is a very hot topic in Alaska, and a cautionary story for the other stocks and a good lesson to learn. But as of 2022, they're thought to be 331 of these animals, so they're endangered and they're depleted. And they think potentially from this estimate that maybe it's stabilizing, but I think it's too soon to know that because it's been declining for a while now. So this is a stock that's really has a lot of eyes on it and a lot of work put into it. Then you have the Bristol Bay stock. It's not listed as endangered or depleted. It's stable and thought to be increasing. There's about 1,600 of these individuals from a 2022 estimate. The Eastern Bering Sea stock, which is why I'm here, and kind of the main stock that we're really interested in with this work. There's about 12,000 of them. They are listed as depleted, but they're not under the Endangered Species Act. And really with this stock, there's just not a lot of, there's limited data. There's definitely a large population, and it seems that harvest is sustainable, but there's limited data and there's a lot of communities, I'll show you later, there's a lot of communities that rely on this stock. And so that's why it's a really important stock to just put some energy into to understand what's going on and keep an eye on it. Then you have the Eastern Chukchi Sea stock, which is about 7,000 to 13,000 whales, so it's not listed at all, and it believed to be pretty stable. It's very small harvest from this stock, so very sustainable. And then the Beaufort Sea stock, about 39,000 whales, not listed, and it has a lot of long-term surveys on it, and it appears to be pretty stable and increasing. So again, there's 4 experts in the room, so please pipe in if I butchered that at all, but that's a general understanding about the stocks in Alaska. And this is a map of all the communities that harvest belugas. So it's really important to Alaska Natives, and it's not just a resource. It's culturally, it's spiritually important. It's important for communities and sharing. And there's so much identity with belugas that it's really, really important. And this is from the North Slope Borough website, but essentially kind of gives you a breakdown of how many different communities are harvesting from each stock. So you can see the Beaufort Sea stock, there's about 6 communities. Eastern Chukchi stock, 2 communities. So like I said, it seems like that one's doing pretty well, and there's not a lot of whales being taken out. And then you can see the Eastern Bering Sea stock, 20 communities. There's tons of communities relying on this stock, and that's why there's a lot more effort now to let's keep an eye on it. And I'll talk about the co-management group that is making that a priority. And then the Bristol Bay stock has 9 communities. And here's a general understanding of how many whales might be taken out a year. This is data from 2017 to 2021. And you can see not that high numbers. And then the Eastern Bering Sea of 212. So again, 20 communities relying on the Eastern Bering Sea stock. Okay, so the Alaska beluga whale community, I've mentioned this before. And like I said, when I was doing bowhead work, these are the individuals I connected with, and they wanted to use this tool to better understand beluga stocks, especially the Eastern Bering Sea stock. A little bit of background on them. So they were formed in 1988 to co-manage beluga whales in western and northern Alaska. And essentially what they did was bring together Alaska Native hunters, local communities, and scientists to just share their knowledge and figure out how to manage sustainable harvest for all these stocks. So a local based approach to managing these stocks, not so much a government approach. And they work directly with NOAA Fisheries under the Marine Mammal Protection Act and their co-management frameworks. They have agreement with them to integrate traditional knowledge science for beluga conservation. So I first started going to these meetings in 2024, nope, 3. 3, 4. What year is it? I've been to 2 of them, and there's another one coming up this December. It'll be my 3rd one. And there's a representative from all the communities on Alaska that harvest belugas, and NOAA's there, and the Marine Mammal Commission is there, and all the researchers, Alaska Fish and Game is there, and researchers that are doing work to understand the stocks, and all working together to make priorities for what should be studied and how to keep managing these stocks sustainably. The focus is on the Bristol Bay stock, the Eastern Bering Sea, Eastern Chukchi stock, and the Beaufort Sea stock. So again, the only one missing there is Cook Inlet because no one harvests from that stock anymore because it's endangered. And I don't do any work with Bristol Bay right now, so I'll just focus on Eastern Bering Sea, Eastern Chukchi Sea, and Beaufort Sea stock. Okay, so what are the objectives of the work that I'm doing? So the first one is, okay, it'd be great to understand the health of all these stocks in Alaska, but belugas, if you have seen them before or seen pictures or whatever, they have a unique body. And so what we want to do with this work and what's unique about this work is that we're partnering with hunters and able to use harvest data to get direct access to harvested animals within the same stocks and the same season that we're flying drone surveys over. And so a lot of body condition work, a lot of drone studies looking at health of whales, you don't have this great partnership or access to the animals. So you have a little bit of some black boxes and hand waving of understanding maybe how you take 2D images from a drone. And I'll explain this more later as well. But turn it into this understanding of what a beluga looks like, what its health is from this above shot. And so it's really awesome that we're able to have this unique connection and this awesome connection to work with animals that have harvested from those stocks, and get a really good understanding about what a beluga looks like. And I will dive into that more. Then, of course, the second objective is let's compare the stocks. Let's look at the health of each stock. Let's fly drones over hundreds of whales of each stock if we can. And then the more we know about all of them, the more we can understand what's going on with each individual stock. And then the last is actually one of the first years we were starting this work. Canada, again, the Beaufort Sea stock is harvested by both Inupiat and Inupialut hunters, so US to Canadian waters. And so they had a few years where they were potentially seeing body condition concerns. Their hunters were seeing it, and so they were really curious. It's the same whales that they're having in the summer that they were seeing some issues that we have swimming by the ice edge, by Point Hope and Utqiagvik. And so they were like, hey, do you mind? Let's work together. Let's know. It'd be great to know what they look like when they're going by you to see if there's something going on. And so just in general, better way to understand the Beaufort Sea stock, working the best we can with Canada. They do great health assessments over there on their belugas, to just understand what's going on. Okay, so let's dive into the advanced drone methods. So how do you measure body condition? And let's start first with like, what is body condition? I think a lot of people probably already know what that is. It's thrown out there a lot these days, especially with marine Arctic whales. But essentially, body condition is just essentially how much blubber there is. How healthy is this animal? How well fed is this whale? If you have thick blubber, it's like, okay, so there's plenty of energy for warmth, migration, reproduction, all these important things for these animals to keep going on and create offspring. If you have thin blubber, maybe these are signs that there's stress, there's poor feeding conditions. It's a reflection on what's going on with the prey. And so what we're able to do with most body condition studies with whales is you can use drones to kind of track how the ecosystems change. And so the thought is that with bowheads and with belugas, that if you can track how the whales look, how healthy they are, how much blubber they have on them, how fat are the whales, you can track Arctic conditions that are potentially reflective from the ecosystems changing. Okay, let's look at the drone. So what am I using? I first started off with this larger drone. It's actually a DJI drone there's a lot of issues with using DJI drones, which I won't dive into here. But essentially I was using this larger drone, and it's pretty amazing because I was able to switch Because of the technology of drones and the partners I worked with, I was able to switch from this larger drone that's a little more finicky and louder to the smaller drone, which is great because I'm able, with bowheads and humpbacks, they're not as acoustic animals and they don't hear as well. But belugas, they're very acoustic creatures, and so having a smaller, quieter drone, I've had no issues with flying over them. Okay, so how do you measure body condition? Essentially, here you go. Here's a shot of a drone shot of a beluga. And what you're doing is you're zooming in on that body outline of the beluga and you're getting these length and width measurements. So you get total length with this from this notch all the way to the rostrum of the nose of the beluga. And then you're getting every 5% increments, you're getting these width measurements. And what you're doing with that, and then of course, using color and length, of course, depending on the age of an animal, if it's a calf or an adult, there's going to be different understanding of what a healthy individual looks like. So you use color and length to put them into age classes. And then what you're doing is you're doing this cross-section modeling measurement. So essentially, what you're doing is you're taking these lengths and widths and you're projecting them to understand these like cylinder type cross section of the animal and adding that all up. Well, so the thing with belugas is if you look here, this is kind of a 3D model of a bowhead whale, and the original and the main methods and modeling that's used for body condition is thinking that this animal is pretty cylinder and it's just decreasing in circles as it goes down the body. Well, we know that's not true with belugas. They're very different looking. And we want to get more reliable estimates and understanding of these animals because these are really important stocks that are important to a lot of people. And so we need local specific profiling of the body shape. So essentially, we need local understanding moving down this body. What does it look like? It's not as easy. It's not as simple as other whales. They have fat rails. They're just unique. No body shaming, but they're weird little creatures that have a lot of different things going on compared to some of the baleen whales. So here's your 2D drone image, right? And then again, what we're trying to get to is this estimate of volume and mass, and that'll give us understanding of how fat is this whale, how healthy, how much blubber, how well is it doing, how well is the Arctic doing. And with this project, like I said, we have this unique partnership, this awesome partnership with whalers, and we have access to harvested animals. So we're able to get direct measurements of animals within the same year, season, and stock. And with whaler knowledge, we're able to get more reliable estimates of how fat this animal is. And because of that, we're able to advance the drone methods used from what we have as standard methods used for body condition with whales to this more beluga specific method that will really help us get a better understanding of body condition and stock health. Okay, so the work so far, oh, here we go. Yeah. So here is Point Lay. So this is Ukjavik. Sorry, I didn't mark Nome on here. Nome is down here. Nope. Nome is down here. Point Hope. Nome is down here. And the work for doing these direct measurements is done in Point Lay. And this year they had an incredible harvest of 23 individuals. And this is an amazing community. They're just so very kind and welcoming. Sorry, I'm having issues with, there we go. The North Slope Bureau has actually been working in this community for decades now, collecting samples on belugas, and they've just been collaborating so well. And a ton of researchers go there to get different information about the belugas for health and what's going on. And they are very kind to welcome me for this work, and it's just an incredible privilege and opportunity to be there. They help pull up the whales and just see what a remarkable thing is to watch these animals we've harvested. And this again is where we're able to get the direct measurements and get the drone over the same individuals to get at this reliable estimate of whale fatness. And so what we do, and this is what we were able to do this summer for the first time, is we're able to push the animals into the water. So a lot of the time when you're getting measurements of whales for harvest data or strandings. These whales are heavy, right? And so usually you're getting half growths from because it's hard to flip them over and get the tape under there. So we're able to actually push it in the water. I have a great team that is really stoked to help with this and get these full girths of the animal to get a better understanding of what's going on. And so here you can see the first thing you get, of course, is that total length, like I showed you with the drone as well, from the fluke notch all the way up to the rostrum. And then what we're doing is we're getting full girths along the body at certain spots. And we have another year of doing this work. We worked with Canada. They do a lot of great health assessments with whales and just trying to figure out where to get these measurements. Also just understanding like how it's, you can see that picture. There's a lot of mosquitoes around, there's murky water. It can be difficult at times. So this is our first go at it. But we were able to get 7 different girth measurements along this animal, and then you get the length from that measurement all the way to the fluke notch. So you have this known spot for when you look at the drone shots, and just standardize it throughout all the individuals. So we're able to do that, and then with that same whale, I flew the drone over them, and I get this top view and the side view. And what we're able to do is, again, do that cross-section modeling measurement. But what we're doing is we're able to use those measurements from that exact individual that we just measured to calibrate them and get correction factors and see how well the drone is measuring these animals. And again, and also what is used a lot for body condition in belugas is, and the Canadians do this a lot, is getting the blubber thickness right between the flippers, the pectorals. And that's supposed to be a good indicator of body health. So I was able to get that as well. And so we're trying to collect as much as we can to be like, okay, here's this individual in front of us. What can we get from this individual? And how can we figure out what we're seeing from the sky and see how to use this tool better and have more information to get really accurate measurements from the drone. So this year we were able to do it on 10 individuals, which is really exciting, of mixed age class and sex, which is really important, right? Because again, potentially a healthy whale at different ages is going to look a lot different. And so we just really want to understand what a healthy whale looks like when we're flying the drone. And then our goal for summer 2026 is do the same thing, potentially maybe more animals or the same amount. But again, we're collaborating with Canada because they have really extensive understanding. And the North Slope has done this a lot with working with some of their researchers to just improve methods. But we want to also weigh them so we can get really good, accurate understanding of the volume and mass, which again goes into that body condition of how fat is that whale. Again, a huge thank you to Point Lay. It's truly incredible to be there. They're so kind and they're so enthusiastic about. Went to the hunters meeting and they're so enthusiastic about drones and how they can help. And then also just so kind, allowing us to get in there and get the samples we need. And it's just incredible to watch the whole community. And there's so many kids that are just so skilled at harvesting a beluga and providing it for their community. It's a really beautiful thing to experience and witness, and just incredible to be there and appreciate their help to make this work happen and get this information back to them. Okay, so that was the first objective of this work. The second one is stock comparison. So again, we want to fly the drone, do drone surveys over belugas, try to get a bunch of individuals so we can start understanding the health of that individual and then the stock in general. And then the more we know about all the stocks, the more we can compare between them to see if there's differences or if there's not differences, and understand then what's happening in different parts of the Arctic if we have this baseline of understanding of how fat these animals are looking, how healthy they are. And so again, the work I've done so far with the Beaufort sea stock in Ukqiagvik and Point Hope, and then Point Lay with the Eastern Chukchi, which I just showed you. So again, doing drone surveys in all communities and then doing those measurements of Eastern Chukchi and the Eastern Chukchi population in Point Lay. And So far, this is just a general understanding for you to see the numbers I've been getting. So Beaufort Sea was the first population I was able to work on, and so I started with getting 22 of them, and this last year was, or this year, wow, it's 2025, getting 350 individuals. And then in Eastern Chukchi, you can see started off 64 and over. I haven't been able to analyze that data yet. It's been a lot of field work this year. I've been in the field 117 days and flown most of them, so it's been awesome. But now it's time to sit down at the computer and actually start measuring these whales and analyzing the data. But this gives you an idea of how many animals able to get over with the drone. And with belugas, it's pretty easy too, and it's kind of unpredictable. I mean, one day you fly over, you'll out there 8 hours, you'll fly over no whales or see no whales, and then the next day, in Point Lay, you can go out there for an hour and there'll be 500 whales going by. So it's they're very social creatures grouping together, so it's very different than bowheads or humpbacks. And they wiggle a lot. Sometimes I find myself yelling at wiggling belugas, wiggling baby belugas. I'll show some videos and stuff. I'm just like, just stay still. I want to measure your body. Um, okay, so there's that work. And then the Lost Beluga Whale Committee, the main reason they kind of brought me on is they really wanted to keep an eye on the Eastern Bering Sea. They do workshops before the annual meeting each year, just about Eastern Bering Sea, getting the representatives from those communities, and they're just want to get more information on this stock. And so you can see, yeah, so they prioritize drone surveys for body condition. And like Gay said, I was in Nome, and then Elam is another location I'll go to get over the Eastern Bering Sea stock. And again, just, yeah, so limited data and just need to get more information on this stock. The Alaska Blue Whale Committee uses, like stocks, like thinking about Cucamonga belugas, and they just want to learn from things that have happened and just be proactive about what they're doing, and just get as much information out there as they can. So honestly, any feedback to them from this region about the Alaska Beluga Whale Committee would be really helpful and important. And yeah, the meeting's next month. So also feel free to send me an email if you want me to drop any messages to them. Okay, so yeah, at the meeting last year is when I started planning for work on the Eastern Bering Sea stock, and Tom Gray is actually the chair of the Lost Beluga Whale Committee, and he hunts belugas and Nome at times. And then I met with Charles Metaluk, who works at Cowork. He's the Subsistence Resource Program Director. And I cannot thank Chuck enough. He was so kind to me. He was so generous with his time, with his knowledge. He shared so many stories with me. He was an incredible observer. We shared a lot of laughs. We drank a lot of coffee. We ate a lot of meals together, and I just cannot thank him enough for how kind he was. I went to know him just by myself to do this field work, and he was just like, any day you want to go out. And he was just so incredible. He's on the feed, and I'll have him jump in and say a few words in a little bit. But just there's just like, thank you is not enough to express how much I value him, and his kindness and just everything he shared. And then it was really fun because Chuck does a lot of and he'll probably talk about this, but beach surveys to look at finding bird carcasses and animal carcasses. And yeah, Gay just shared with me that there was a young beluga that was found. But he was interested in using the drone to do these surveys because there's a lot of beach in Nome, and it takes a lot of time, and he puts in a lot of his own time to do this. And so the drone is a great tool to cover more time or cover more beach in less time. And he was a natural. I gave him a few lessons, and he was just such a natural. He was awesome at it. And so again, this is just another thing of like, here's this tool, but there's so many other ways it can be applied to help. And I think a lot of people on this talk probably know that drones are used for so much these days. So I was there for the whole month of October. Well, I guess I was there for September 25th to October 25th because the belugas showed up a week before I got there. There's actually about 500 of them before I think along the coast before before I got there. And then I emailed Chuck and I was like, should I come? And so I headed up a little earlier. But most of our work was done at Cape Nome, and this is actually right here at this point um, is where local hunters put out nets, to catch belugas, and also just harvest belugas from there. And this is where we would see the belugas. There was one time we saw them in the port, but for the most time we were going right here and just staring at the water and looking for belugas. And um, I just got back, so I don't know how many individuals I got. Um, it was a little bit of a trickier spot because they're in shallow waters. I'll show you a video next. So it's a bit murky at times, depending on the tide and the wind, depending on where that murk line was. And then there was a few storms that went through. Unfortunately, a few storms that went through the area, and so there's a lot of mixing as well. So I definitely we got some, um, and I was hoping for a little bit more, but I mean, it was great to get there. And it's also just you never know with whales and drone work and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that have to line up. And again, you could go out for 2 weeks and not see anything, and then the last day you could see 500 of them. So it's totally it's a hard thing to really predict. And so usually I try to go to a place as long as I can, and a month is what I could do. Um, and here's the video, and I think it might be a little glitchy. I'm really sorry. But you can see the first day Chuck took me out, we got there and there was like 20 whales, and they were all really close to the beach, as you can see. And they were feeding on tomcod, and we knew they were feeding on tomcod because they were washing up on shore and locals were finding them. And we also found a bunch of tomcod as we were there. I helped Chuck sample some tomcod. But you can see in the outline of the beluga body. Hopefully it's playing well. I can't tell if you guys are seeing it or not, but hopefully.
We're seeing
But
it.
you can
It's a little glitchy, but it's good. Very
okay.
clear. Very nice.
Okay. If you look, the contrast with the beluga bodies, you can see fish and also a bunch of fish right there. I'm gonna play back really quick. Right there, a bunch of them. It's really cool to be able to see the tomcod, and then along the bodies there, you can see the fish swimming around them. So it was pretty amazing first day. It's like, oh man, Chuck, here, this is amazing. Um, I also told him like, oh, I bet we won't see whales for the next 2 weeks, and so we definitely earned it by watching a lot of water and not seeing much. But that was pretty incredible the first day to get out there. And before I got there, yeah, talking to locals, and they were saying they were seeing hundreds of them just right coming so close to the beach. And the construction workers they're working on Cape Nome, they're doing a construction project. They were so kind and enthusiastic about the work, and I gave them my phone number, and they were calling us to let us know what was going on. So it was awesome. And also so fun is always you see something happening and then you're like, oh, we think that's tomcod, and then it's also great to actually see a tomcod on the beach. So it's great to make that connection between the prey and the whale. So again, like I said, helped Chuck collect some tomcod to sample. And Chuck, if you want to jump on and say anything about your work or the project or anything, feel free to unmute yourself. Also, you don't have to if you don't want to. I've
No,
lost my. Oh, yeah, go for it.
I'm comfortable. Yeah, I started doing beach surveys last year, and actually, I didn't start it. I just restarted it. Austin Namasak in the past had done beach surveys for dead birds and dead animals back in 2019, I think. And after he left, the work kind of stopped. So uh, my first meeting with Gay Sheffield was about what was going on in the Bering Sea about the cold water blob, and we had a big discussion about that. And um, the main driver that I have for myself and my job um, is that my theory is in 5 to 10 years the Bering Sea is gonna turn upside down. Uh, as far as ecologically, because there is no more cold water barrier that keeps out the pollock and the Pacific cod that don't like cold water, and that's why I've been focusing on again on doing the beach surveys for dead and sick animals and birds. And when I first heard about Maddie, I went up to her and gave her my phone number and address and told her if she comes to Nome, I'll help her out. And I just wanted her to show me how to fly drones. That was my main purpose. But after meeting with her and talking about her work, and um, I totally support what she does. We need this data and we need it now because everything is happening, and it's good work. So thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it. And yeah, again, Chuck, yeah, thank you is not enough. Again, the amount of time he gave me, and he also showed me different areas around Nome, and told me stories about his experiences, and it was just, yeah, an incredible experience. And I'm really grateful to have met him and have a lifelong friend. And yeah, again, just excited to get other people stoked on drones and how they can help. So
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention one thing. I think is it, the uses for it are, I could see us in the once we get enough people trained on this, we could actually contract with the state of Alaska to do their salmon counting on rivers that they normally fly over, and I think it would be even more accurate than them doing the aerial survey. So yeah.
thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I think, there's a lot. The drones are just getting more and more advanced, and essentially by that I mean it's just longer flight times and better cameras. And so with longer flight times, better cameras, you can do a lot more with them. So it's just, yeah, take time to see what we can do to do with them. Okay, so here's again just the overview of everything. And so I've done all the work up north here, and then I was just there in October in Nome, and then the last bit of field work I'll be doing is Elam. I'll be in there in the spring, which I'm really excited to do. And so it's also really cool. It's always great to do comparisons of like different times of year for the same stock. We have comparisons between Beaufort Sea in the spring and then Eastern Chukchi in the summer, but they're different stocks, so they're essentially there's a lot of variables there. But with the Eastern Bering Sea, it'd be great to have fall and spring comparison, and so keep working the Bering Strait region to just see how I can get drones over more whales and get more information. So yeah, the general big picture of the stock comparison is that the thought here is that the Eastern Chukchi is this healthy population. We're getting the measurements from them. It's a population that's doing well, and we want to use that to compare to the Beaufort Sea stock because again, Canada said that potentially they had a few years of some body condition issues, and so we can look at potential if there's any differences there. If not, then there isn't. But if there is, that we can track that. Or if we don't see anything now, if something changes in the future, it'd be great if this could be a really good long-term monitoring program to just understand how beluga whales are doing in the Arctic as things change. And then again, using both of those stocks. Again, the more we know about all the stocks in Alaska, the more we can understand what's going on with belugas in Alaska. But use that to compare to the Eastern Bering Sea and see if there's any differences. And so that's what I don't have results for you. That's the whole story of how it happened and the field work. And I am chained, not chained. I am at my computer, and that's what I'm doing this winter. And it's actually not that bad of a gig because it's pretty gorgeous footage I get to look at. So pretty lucky. And yeah, I kind of mentioned this already, but generally the funding goes to the end of 2026 for the field work. And so I'll be doing a little bit of I'll be doing some more, I don't have it on here, I forgot to put it, but we'll be in Point Lay again to do more measurements and also maybe get some weights, and then do some, again, some surveys in Elam, and then using all these results to figure out future work. So working really closely with ABWC and communities to set the priorities for future work, and also, you know, in contact with Canada for that population in different areas of Canada. And I've reached out to a lot of different beluga researchers in other areas to just see what the work they're doing, and just want to use this work. So again, we have this unique access to the animals to measure them, and so want to figure out a way to have the best tool and methods and modeling to get reliable estimates of health, and share that with other researchers and work with them to see if they've, you know, figured out things that we haven't, and also have connections with researchers that work at aquarium to see if we can get measurements of captive animals. And there's been some studies that have done that to help understand things. So just my goal is to work with as many people as you can to just try to get the best results with this work, because again, it's really important to a lot of people. And I kind of, leeway into the last priority is collaborating with Canada, again, to line up our methods so we are really getting an understanding of the health of these animals. So my work in Point Hope, Nukiavik in the spring, the Beaufort sea stock, and then in summer they go to Canada. And so this last year, August, was my first time to the Inuvialuit Beluga Whale Management Committee, which is also a co-management group. I don't have their history off the top of my head, and I think I'd butcher it if I tried, but essentially they got together because there's polar bears and belugas that are hunted in Alaska and Canada. And so getting everyone down to the table, a co-management group to work together to manage these stocks that they go from the US to Canada. So working closely with them. And then, the reason I'm here is because all this work, looking at all these stocks to really understand and keep an eye on and get more data on the Eastern Bering Sea. Because like I mentioned before, 20 communities rely on this stock of belugas. And again, not just as a resource, culturally, spiritually, identity, community sharing, intergenerational knowledge. It's so important. And so that this is a project that is trying to help get more data. The more we know, usually the better off we are. And so it'd be great to get back to Cape Nome, and again, very excited to get to Elam. And then once I start analyzing data, be able to hopefully get back to you guys, present again with some results and potential future work. Throughout this whole experience, especially working directly with Craig George, who is really good at working with communities and hunters. We've from the very beginning, our goal was to get people in communities trained to fly drones. Working with Chuck was awesome, and Chuck is a natural, and I'm excited to hear how that work goes with flying beach surveys. But this work will be so much more sustainable, and so much more data will be collected and there's a lot of communities that have people flying drones, but if we're able to train them up and they can fly drones over whales and collect more data. And so that's really a goal we're trying to get to at some point. And then we want to do educational programs for kids. And these first years are just collecting information on the logistics and methods and making these connections so my goal is to keep this work going. I started before as a PhD student, as my own LLC, as an independent researcher, and now I'm a PhD student, and then I want to keep it going after. So if the community and the people want it going, I will dig in and find funding and try to keep this work moving forward. Okay, I have my last video is videos of some belugas in other areas. So you can see this. So this is up in Nukiavik. Those are actually bowheads, but this is up in Nukiavik, and you can see some belugas in some clearer water. Very fun to see them swim between this kuyak, which is that young ice right there. which is interesting because I feel like they could easily, it doesn't impact them all, but they always try to find the open spot to breathe, it seems, even though the ice is so thin. And there's a lot of fun babies to look at. And I'm just always pretty fascinated by the ice. Sometimes I'm out flying and I forget I'll be taking photos of the ice and forget that I'm supposed to be icing whales. Not really, but sometimes I'm just like, wow, that ice is pretty incredible. And this is Point Lay. So these are the barrier islands that are right outside Point Lay. And there's these passes where fresh water flow and it's warm water. And the thought is these animals are molting and using the warm water to molt and they're socializing. You're standing on the shore. It counts like cooking that there, but it definitely, this is Point Lay. But you can see the water quality is varies a lot and you need good water quality for body condition. But you stay on the shore there and there the water quality is getting a little better. You got some babies. You've got some less wiggly whales, which is nice. But you stand on the shore and you can hear them talking like crazy. It's really fun. And the Barrier Islands are just beautiful. The colors are beautiful and the area is just gorgeous. And there's some really clear water, which is fun, but you can see how shallow it was because you can see that one flapping its flukes and making the ground come up. And then there's a bunch more babies. And that middle one definitely want to show his body because woo, spinning. But yeah, there's just hundreds of whales that are moving by those Barrier Islands, and sometimes they're uniformly going by, or sometimes they're wiggling around. You can see how close they are. There's the team standing there enjoying the show. Sometimes the I sometimes I refer them going by the ice edge because it's a little more systematic with migrating by. Where in these big groups, I'm like, I don't know who I flew over, which is also something to sort out with the data analyzing. But you can see it's just fun to see them all hanging out and they're just talking. Unfortunately, drones don't get sound, but the amount of sound they create is amazing. And with that, I just want to thank everyone. And yeah, thank the Alaska Blue Whale Committee, North Slope Borough for working with us, the Alaska Partner in Fish and Game, with being on their permit, and then the funding, and the incredible support from the National Science Foundation and Marine Mammal Commission, and of course all the communities and hunters and everything. And yeah, I'll take some questions. And again, I am not a beluga expert, so but I will do my best to answer your questions. Show my video.
Right. Thank you so much, Madison. You might
How'd I do
want,
on
yeah, there,
time?
you're back on. Nice to see you. That's good. So thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation. Just gorgeous, honestly. And thank you for explaining what you're doing. And we look forward to you coming back with your results. And that'll be really something we look forward to hearing. So thank you for that. Before you ask your questions or put anything in the chat, this is, or not say put anything in the chat. This is the time. It's never easy to be a public speaker. Madison rocked it. And so this is the time to show a little love in the chat box for Madison. She's already, it's late for her in the evening. She probably had a full day of work, and we really appreciate spending the time with us this evening. So your time. And I see
Thanks for
Charlie's
having
hand.
me.
Oh, what's that?
I said thanks for having me. Yeah, I got
Oh,
up at
you
5
bet.
and I
Thank you
didn't
for
think my
coming.
brain was that tired, but there was a few moments where I feel like I was glitching. Sorry about that.
No,
brain
it's
brain
never easy.
buffer.
You did great, and it's late at night, especially at your end. Charlie, I see your hand up. Go ahead. Charlie, if you can hear me, your hand is up. You may have walked away. Or the
No, there I got my mute.
okay. It's the I was
Okay.
just gonna say it's on the bottom bar or wherever the bar
Yeah.
is. It's on the microphone thing.
No, I very much enjoyed your presentation. And I used to fly fish, herring, and salmon surveys, and would see the beluga down below me, and it was very nostalgic. Anyway, but I'm very concerned that the salmon are crashing in Norton Sound and on the Yukon, and that's a primary food for the beluga. And I'd be really interested in trends for beluga condition over time. So I think that would be of interest to a lot of us. Um, and so I think that's something that could come out of this research. And I'm glad that Chuck is picking up on it. I think that's great. So.
Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, this is my first time working outside of the North Slope, and it was great to. Every part of Alaska is so different. There's no blanket statement or understanding, and so it's been great. And I'm just learning now, diving into understanding the issues that are happening, and in that area where you guys are. And so it's just been a great experience. And yeah, I think the more you get out to different areas, the more you learn, and the better you can refine whatever you're doing. So I really appreciate being welcome to Nome. And yeah, there's learning more about all the issues you guys are facing.
All right. Any questions in the chat? Oh, we have one. Sammy Stroud. Go
Hi,
ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thanks so much for this presentation, Madison. I'm actually a PhD student down in Eugene at the University of Oregon. But I'm a social scientist, and I'm just starting a project about beluga management and conservation in the Hudson Bay, so just on the other side of Canada.
Cool.
So yeah, super interesting. And I'm curious if do you have a sense about how like this data might be used? I guess from my perspective in Canada, sometimes like the quota system for subsistence hunting can, ruffle some feathers and be kind of contentious. And it seems like in Alaska, there's a more co-management framework. And have you thought at all about like how this data and with your collaborations in Canada, like how that's going to be negotiated?
That's a good question. So this year is my first year going to the Inuvialuit, and hopefully I'm saying that right, co-management group. And so far, everyone was pretty supportive of it, and they had made some progress on body condition work. And so I've been working with them, but I'm just learning how things work in Canada. So I'm not sure. All I know is that at that meeting, everyone was very enthusiastic about body condition work. And so with this, I just want to compare between what they have. And also if they're doing it and they're not sure about, sharing the results, but I want to share the methods that we use. Cause I mean, they have direct access to harvest animals too, but just wanting to make sure we're working together on that. I think my approach is just to give it to the co-management group because they approved the work and they're interested in it. And then I think, yeah, that's kind of where my work stops. But that's a great question. And you're a couple hours away, so I'd love to chat in person. But this year is the first time I really started working. The North Slope Borough has worked with them a while and tried to reach out and has collaborated on methods and things like that. But this is my first year kind of working directly with the co-management group and stuff. So still navigating that, but so far my approach has mostly just been I'll provide it back to the co-management group and they'll decide where to go from there. I think I'm getting blurry. That was probably not the best answer, but
no, that was great. Thank you.
So two things, is it Sammy? I'm not sure how to.
Sammy, you got it right the first time.
So
Thanks.
you might want to, you and Madison, you can throw your contact information in the chat and she'll have it that way.
Sure, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, and then just for your thinking and maybe for others on the call, the North Slope Borough is a region, a borough that is encompassing the northern part of the state. There's another borough that also hunt beluga called the Northwest Arctic Borough, and that was we didn't see anything on Kotzebue, but there's beluga in there as well. And then there's the Bering Strait region. We're an unorganized borough, but we are a borough. We just don't have the money to have a burrow, and we're very diverse ethnically and whatnot. So we have 20 tribes, 20 tribal governments in the Bering Strait region, no overarching borough government, and we are with 3 linguistically, culturally distinct Alaska Native peoples, and we have the Russian border here, so we're pretty dynamic. If that helps. So you may hear about the North Slope Borough quite a bit, but what we're talking about in Nome and Elam is a very different structure, if that's helpful to you. Don't know. If you're interested in the social science side of things, just so I hope that helps.
Thanks, Gay. I appreciate you filling. Yeah, like I said, I'm new to all this, so I'm learning and making mistakes and growing, and so I
No, not
appreciate
a
you filling
mistake.
that in. Yeah, no,
Just
yeah. And
more
also
detail.
another thing I did wanted to say to that
Yep.
question. I was at a meeting in Point Hope when we were asking if it was okay to do work there. And one of the whalers asked, well, what if you find out that there is poor body condition, or why we don't want anything to happen to shut down what we're doing in whaling. And John Setta, who works for the North Slope Borough, does a lot of work with bowhead whales, and bowhead whales is a whole different topic, and a lot more political. And there's a lot of scientists made a lot of mistakes in the past, and so he had a really good point, and he said, so far with the work that's been done with whales and stuff with in Alaska, is the more we know, the better we're able to manage and protect subsistence hunting. And so I feel like I agree with that. Is like the more we know, the sooner we know things, the more we're able to navigate things. Maybe that's not true, and maybe it's different in this region. And but yeah, it alleviated some of the concern at one point with Point Hope whalers, and they're very supportive of the work now. But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. Are you, can we go? Well, I think I see Chuck up next. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. That was very good. And it's impressive. I don't know where you're calling. Oh, you said you're in Eugene. Hudson Bay. We wish you the luck. And maybe we'll hear more about you when Madison returns. So that'll be great. Go ahead, Chuck. I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is there any discussion on the humpback whales that are starting to go north that we've never seen, anywhere except for in the last 10 to 15 years, how they're affecting what the bowhead and the beluga feed on? I'm assuming that they're there for the same thing. They're eating the same thing, and that wasn't always the case in the past. So I I don't
Yeah.
remember ever, not when I was on the AWC, there was no talks about bowhead, humpbacks, but now
Humpbacks.
they're in the Arctic, and I'm wondering if there's any correlation between, Beauford's body questions and what the humpbacks are eating, so.
Yeah,
So,
good point. Oh, sorry, Gabe, did you?
no, go ahead if you want
Oh,
to
I'd
handle
say
that.
Kate Safford, who is my advisor at Oregon State University, who's been going up to Ukqiavik for since the early 2000s to help with harvest sampling, and also she does a lot of acoustic work. And so she has a lot of experience in the area, but she does a lot of big boat surveys up in the Arctic. And there she's trying to get money to do more surveys to see what's going on with humpbacks. And I know the concern that people have, and yeah, maybe you can add on to this, is the humpback whales are opportunistic feeders. And as there's less ice, they're moving north. And so potentially, yeah, they could have an impact similar to like killer whales moving farther north. But I'm not sure if there has been big discussions about actions or anything, of just documenting and see what's going on. But yeah, Gabe, what do you know?
Well, we're talking about beluga here, but we'll segue into humpbacks. It's a really good question, Chuck. It's something that people, I think the first time I knew there were humpbacks and provided that information to Kate Stafford was in 2006, when people started to call in about large, what are these large we've had them by St. Lawrence Island, but not up into the Chukchi, and certainly not near Diomeden whales until people started asking, what is this whale with super long arms? And uh, so yes, there is probably an impact. I don't have an answer for you on that, but it's a really good question. And I know that the NOAA Cetacean Assessment Program, which is the federal large whale biologists that reside in Seattle, Washington, and work at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center, we have had some of their large surveys, and I think we're going to have a Strait Science coming up on what they found this summer. But we would like more interaction and more communications from the large cetacean people. I think there's a lot of questions at the Bering Strait region. There's certainly a lot of stuff we're seeing. And we thank the Cetacean Assessment Program for what they can talk to us, but often we'd like to have them be more of a conversation with all of the tribes. One of our problems is, I think for them, they like to go to the co-management meetings, and that's something where they can talk to Eastern Norton Sound, Beluga, tribally appointed representatives, but the rest of the communities who whale, and we have four of our four communities harvest bowhead here. So things like the other large whale sightings and things like that, is just not possible at this time. So thank you for bringing that up, Chuck. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hope that answers that. Does that help?
Yeah, that does. And again, that's like thinking about how the Arctic's changing. Like I said, like being able to have a quicker way to fly out the drone, get over a few hundred belugas and monitor their health over the years, that if we potentially could see how things change if these other things are changing in the Arctic and understand what's going on. So maybe have a better understanding sooner how these things are impacting. But I know Kate said they were not talking about it at the last Alaska Eskimo Whaling Committee commissioner meeting, which is the beluga or the bowhead. What's the word I'm looking for? Bowhead management group. Yeah. So I know it's been brought up. So they're keeping an eye on it. Maybe humpbacks are tasty. Am I allowed to say that?
There is whaling of humpbacks in Bequia and in other parts of the globe, but not in U.S. waters at
Yeah.
this time, legally, as my understanding. So, all right, we have very patient Teresa Becker. Your hand is up. The floor is yours.
Teresa Becker. Hi, Madison.
Hi, Teresa's a good friend. I worked with her
right.
with cooking that beluga work, so she's awesome.
I can tell you that you couldn't ask for a better person to have up there with you guys than Madison. She has supported me for years. I worked with her, yes, as she said, she was my coordinator for Alaska Beluga Monitoring Program, but she also helped me develop a database. And I'm now a master's graduate student at UAA, working on the belugas and focusing on the Kenai River. So my interest in your drone information it's fascinating. How high are you flying the drone over the whales, and how are you kind of navigating the disturbance issue? Or do you have a quiet enough drone now that that's not an issue?
Yeah, when I first started in 2023 and I was just doing the pilot work, I had that bigger drone, and flying over bowheads at 30 meters is totally fine. But I was concerned because obviously, belugas are toothed whales. They're very acoustic animals, so they can hear pretty well. And I started flying at 100 meters and then slowly went down. And the thing with the big drone is I wasn't able to get as close as I wanted to. It was interesting because in Canada, they were flying drones over whale belugas and saying they weren't having any issues. And what I found with the big drone when I first was doing it is that if they were in groups, socializing and doing things. They couldn't care less. But luckily, and then if they were by themselves, they wouldn't, it wasn't the crazy disturbance, but they would look at it and then they would dive under. And so then I stopped flying at that height, you know, if it would happen to like two animals, and I would stop doing it. But then I would see that they'd come right back up along the ice edge, and they wouldn't, you know, they weren't being disturbed to a completely different area or anything. But when I switched to the smaller drone, I don't really have any issues at all. I still don't go, I stay around 40 meters. And I don't have any issues with, and depending on the individual, like I said, if it's along the ice edge, it's a very quiet day, I'll fly a little higher to make sure I'm not disturbing them at all. And I don't want to disturb them either, right? Because I can't get a good shot of them. And again, the only thing I've ever seen when I say disturbance is a couple of them when I was first year, is they would just turn and look, and then they would just slowly then just decide to dive under. But with the smaller drone, I really don't have any issues. It's much quieter. And I stay around 40, sometimes go in those bigger groups. And when the Chukchi sea population in Point Lay, where they're making a bunch of noise and stuff, I've gone down to 30. I mean, I can go to 30 feet with my permit, which I can't remember what that is in meters, but I only go to like 30 meters. Because that's all I need, but I haven't had any issues. And I know in Canada they say they're using the same drone. They haven't had any issues. But yeah, so far so good. And then as I analyze the data, I'll see if that height, it seems so far that it's good enough to get the measurements that you need. But it's interesting too, because I feel like sometimes it just depends on, you know, whales have memories and stuff. And it's really interesting because one year I was flying over a group of belugas that were just chilling, and I was flying at like 80 meters above them, and I had been following them for like 3 minutes. They couldn't care less. They were babies. They were just swimming. And all of a sudden the flock of ducks flew between the belugas and my drone, and all 9 of them dove down, which was really, really interesting, because it's just like thinking about what is like an aerial stimulus that would like why would they have that reaction to ducks flying by. And then I had the same thing happen a couple years later in a different location, and I had the same thing. I was above them, ducks flew right under, and the whales didn't dive at all. So it's interesting to think about the experience the whales have. I've also watched whales when there's hunting going on and stuff. I've watched whales, you know, they'll react to snow machines and stuff, which a lot of communities know they do, and that's why they sometimes certain whaling camps want to go farther away from town. But I'll see, I keep getting this blur thing. Sorry, you'll see belugas that'll be right on the ice edge, and then they'll start to hear some snow machines, and then they'll sneak right under the ice edge and just barely come up for a breath and go back under. I mean, they're smart animals. And hunters talk about that all the time, about that's why there's a lot of things that hunters do to be quiet and not be seen. And so it's I think it's not just, I try to approach each situation cautiously, even if I know I've done this another day, because you just kind of don't know what the whales have experienced and what they've logged in their brain and how they might change. But overall, like 99.9% of the time, I don't have any issues with flying over them.
Thank you, Madison. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I don't really know. I know they did a little bit of drone work in Cook Inlet belugas, and mostly because it's murky, they can't get body condition, but they're matching the both sides of them, right? I'm not sure Paul Wade did that. I'm not sure if they had issues with disturbance or anything, if you know.
I don't know. I know that on the Kenai, it could be just, there's so many people that are flying drones out there, and you know, there's all kinds of rules about what they can and can't do. And I know somebody flew a drone the other day right over the top of a group that was heading towards the mouth anyway, going out. And but the drone spooked them, and they just booked it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
But
those guys
it was
too,
right
right?
over the top of them.
So that reminds me of something I was hoping to bring in, if I can jump in here. And thank you, Teresa, for bringing up the topic in my head.
Thank
That
you.
is, we do have people all over the coast now flying drones just for fun. And here we have in the corner, in the left-hand corner of Madison's slide, you can see that she has a permit number that she's putting out there to let people know that she's not just flying, she's flying under strict guidelines. And maybe can you just for 30 seconds or 20 words or something, Madison, give just what that is, that there's a federal oversight for doing research just like this with a flying drone.
Yeah. So just for general whale research,
Yeah.
right, you have to go through a process of showing that you've experience to get on someone's permit. First, they have to trust you to actually apply to have you on their permit, and then sorry, go ahead.
No, it's not a thing about trust. There's a
Oh,
permit
okay.
process, right?
Yeah.
That's that. I just go right to the permit process.
Yeah,
And
there's a permit
trust
process
is
and
not
there's
really a thing. That's nice,
okay.
but you need a permit to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need a permit to fly.
Not to cut you off, but
Well, and it's also there's a bit of a gray area too with the general public, because when I first started flying drones in 2020 or 2018, I called the permit office, and no one doesn't have set, and maybe Teresa, you've looked at those recently, they don't have set regulations about how high above you can fly. They just say don't disturb belugas, which is kind of difficult because there's so many people with drones. So really, like, because I was asking, because so many people were asking me, can I fly over whales? And I was just like, I don't really know what to say to these people. And really, I was told to discourage it. But I think the only regulation they have is you can't disturb them. And I remember dealing with this with Alaska beluga whale monitoring program, because we would have a lot of people on turn and arm, and like Teresa saying, and Kenai flying drones. I think you should not fly a drone over endangered species in general. But the thing is, I think as like a Joe Schmo, I think people can fly drones over whales. They're just not supposed to disturb them. But you can't actually ping them for flying drones over them, if that makes sense. I'm getting blurry again.
And Gay, you might know more, but I think it also falls under the Marine Mammal Protection Act that you can't get within 300 feet of a whale.
so thank you both for that. I just wanted to make sure that drones get mentioned. The Fish and Wildlife Service for walrus have a much more conservative height and they have direct guidelines. So it would be helpful, I think, for all of us who, there's a lot of drone owners, and whales are awesome, and so are the marine animals, so are the land animals, right? Moose and muskox and everything else we have up here. And I do worry sometimes that
Yeah.
do we have good guidelines, and are we talking about and educating about the drone use and the guidelines, just for the sake of making a good environment for the animals, where they're on land or not. I have been followed by a drone and I didn't like it. Somebody was droning around and I wanted to pick up a rock and almost did.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I
So
love
anyway,
drones
just
for
something I
certain
want to make
things, but
sure people knew
yeah.
that they can't just get in a drone and do this awesome job that Madison's doing. You have really strict reporting that she has to do and guidelines that she has to adhere to, and it matters. There's actually federal regulatory obligations for this. So that can be quite serious if you are disturbing animals and you have no permit and things like that. So I just wanted to make
Well,
sure we did address that a little bit here, because
yeah.
it's important for
No, it is
everybody.
important. And I've been annoyed by drones. I definitely have been on hikes and people just flying drones to disturb people. And I've gotten concerned about this too with this work, because there's a lot of people that have drones, and there's a lot of people that will just fly drones out like far away and just, hover over people.
Right.
And yeah, that's the thing, right? It's a great tool, but also people abuse it. And hopefully we can educate people not to do that, because that would have direct consequences of this work being done and being able to use the tool. But we're humans, right? So humans always use a tool for the right things and the wrong things. And so, yeah, I know
there are
it's a big
strict rules.
issue.
And if anyone has any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them. I'm sure Madison would be too. And Teresa, sounds like you're in the know as well, but we don't have your contact info. So I just wanted to make sure. So thank you both, Teresa and Madison, for tackling that and mentioning something, because it's something you worry about and you can get in trouble for if you don't have a permit. But I do have a question for you, Madison, and that is, can you
Yeah.
take us to a slide that has Chukotka in it? I think in the beginning you have some beautiful slides. I know you had to take out Chukotka to get your whales in when you were talking about the different stocks.
Yeah. Let's see.
But in the beginning you had some great Google ones. And while she's scrolling back, my question was, because it's interesting to see that Utqiagvik is Beaufort Sea coast, but then Point Hope is Beaufort Sea coast, and yet Point
Is it
Ley,
this?
the Chukchi, or sorry, not coast,
Wait.
stock. Keep going to where the ocean is. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, this one.
Yeah,
This one?
yeah, that'll do. That's great, actually. That'll do it. I was thinking more the colorful one, but this is actually my question. So we know on our side, when you live in the Bering Strait region, everything's transboundary. Everything's transboundary. And one of my questions has been, when I see these, and I'm very familiar with the stocks of Alaska, and I'm glad you put Yakutat Bay in, because there are those very mysterious few beluga that live in Yakutat, and God only knows if that's a separate stock. But
Yeah.
in the Bering Strait region or the Chukchi Sea, where we have this transboundary, we have a line, but the animals do not. And we do know that there are beluga that go into the Gulf of Anadyr and some are in the Gulf of Anadyr. But do you have, and maybe you don't, and because I'm ignorant, do we have a good understanding of the stocks and movements of the beluga just on that between Wrangel Island and the north shore of the Chukotka Peninsula, or western Bering Strait on into the Gulf of Anadyr, and you can kind of see that's the north shore of the Gulf of Anadyr, just northwest of St. Lawrence Island. Do we have good data for those stocks? And if you don't know, that's okay. It's not a trick question.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know that collaborating with Russia right now has been difficult.
Sure.
Which
We
was
get
something that happened with the bowheads this year when they were doing their aerial surveys. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. And that's not
Sorry.
a bad question. I just am
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
that, if we look at like, Eastern Chukchi Sea stock, do we
Yeah.
know if that continues over, or is it something coming out of the East Siberian Sea or Laptev Sea, right? And so I'm behind on my beluga genetic. I think I haven't heard
Well,
much
I
about.
know this last meeting, they're trying to, and I can't remember, I just blanked on it, but they're trying to use more advanced genetic work. It's more expensive, and getting the samples has to be collected in a more precise way. But I know that was a huge topic that they're pushing because, right, like as the Arctic's changing, the ice is changing, where these whales are going is so different that they're trying to do more advanced genetic studies to really get at stock structure, because things are changing so much, and they move so much, and like you said, you got Russia, you got Canada, you have so much going on, and so I know there's a lot of push to trying to advance the genetics so we can get more information that way. But it's a complex issue.
Right. So if you find out that all the way across is Eastern Chukchi stock, all the way over to Vankarum and, all the way over Pavek, then maybe Point Hope or Point Ley doesn't, well, there's a heck of a lot more than we think,
Yeah.
right? That kind of thing. Or vice versa, if people on one side are harvesting a lot and we're not talking, and it turns out it's the same group, where it seems like that we could be doing all the best. Each side could be doing the very best they think they've got, and yet we could be both missing the mark. And so that's the kind of stuff. I know there's not much to be done about it, especially right now, but it is good to remember, as we always do in the Bering Strait region, we live kind of this transboundary stuck East-West Germany type situation. With
Yeah.
the animals, they don't know about a border. They don't care. They're going to go
Yeah.
where they go.
Well,
Anyway,
and I
thank you.
mean, John said I might be the one to email about that because he's making it a priority to really get a better understanding and try to sort this out. Because yeah, it's not easy, and so he
No,
really
I'm
has
sure it's
made it
not
a
easy.
priority. So, but he
Wonderful.
would know. He would probably know the best out of anyone.
Wonderful. Well, I think NOAA would probably know, right? They're the ones at the international level. I
True.
don't know,
Yeah.
but good. So that's good to hear. And any other questions? Thank you very much, Madison. We've kept you till, I don't know what time it must be in Newport, but you're doing great.
It's only 9. That's
You're
okay.
take tomorrow off. You're doing great. Any other questions for Madison? All right. Well then, Madison, if you don't mind staying for a couple minutes, and Chuck, you
Yes.
too, stick around. We can have a little reunion for a second. And I want to thank all of you for coming. We are going to have Straight Science next Wednesday, the 13th, or Thursday, the 13th. And that is going to be on the Sekuliak cruise that happened this summer. And they stopped at several villages along the way. It's called the Action Project, and that will be by Kay McMonigal and their team that was on Sekuliak, I believe, in July. And we'll hear more about their stop at St. Lawrence Island and the work that they're doing. So tune in on the 13th, and we can't thank you enough, Madison. Everybody here, belugas are a wonderful thing. Oh, and I just wanted to pass along, you are aware that some belugas can be gray and pregnant.
I did not know that.
Okay. Chuck, we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Chuck harvested
Cool.
one years ago that was gray and pregnant. With that, thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next week.